Welcome to Heal the World Show podcast, brought to you by the Healing Institute. I'm Parmelia Parham. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Healing Institute. And the Healing Institute is an online worldwide hub of holistic practitioners. You know, we have a big job, but we're up for it. We're out to heal the world. That's why this podcast is called Heal the World Podcast, Heal the World Show podcast. And every week I invite someone as a guest co-host to pop on and talk about wellness in their area of expertise. But before I introduce you to our co-host, our guest co-host today, I just want you to know that I have been involved in holistic healing for well over 20 years, and it really works. So our holistic practitioners that we have on the website, they're finding the root cause of what's going on with you. If it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, whatever it might be, they'll get to the root cause. We're not just looking at symptoms. And I think that's what's so important now for us to be analyzing what that is based on our medical model we've had for a number of years that just is not working anymore. So why is this so important to me, you might ask? Well, because we did have a tragedy in my family a number of years ago, in that my mother died at age 61 due to being on a medication for many, many years. And not that her doctor had ever warned her that being on the medication for that period of time could affect her kidneys. So unfortunately, we lost her right before Christmas. I was 5 months pregnant with my son. And it was not only a tragedy that we lost her at such a young age, but also my children didn't get to meet their grandmother. And I don't want that happening for anybody else or any other family. Institute. An institute is because I'm really passionate about educating people about how to be well, how to stay well. We're all on a health journey. So let's do that health journey from a positive, proactive wellness society point of view. I often say we've been a reactive illness society for way too long. So it's time to change up that paradigm shift. So today I'm so excited to welcome Eric Maxwell. Eric's coming from North Carolina. I'm on the west coast of the continent and he's on the east coast of the continent, but by able to communicate like this, it's perfect. So Eric is just recently retired from the military, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his story. And he is a leadership and wellness expert, and also a mental health and wellness advocate. Now, June, I decided we were having themes for Heal the World Show podcast, and I decided June was going to be Men's Wellness Month. So that's why this next 4 weeks I get to talk to 4 delightful men. And the reason I made that decision was because May was Women's Wellness Month. And I said, oh my goodness, I don't want the guys to feel left out. So
we appreciate that.
You're welcome. So actually, it's National Men's Wellness Month. So it's perfect. It's working perfect. So Eric, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you and your background. We're delighted to have you here today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Parmelia. I really appreciate you having me. And, like we've talked before, off show about, everything that you're doing and healing the world and the wellness aspect is so important. And thanks for sharing your story as well. So it is National Men's Health Month, but also PTSD awareness and mental health month as well, which is, hugely important to me, especially with my military background. So, I've spent 20 years in the military and in the special operations community specifically. And, I've done multiple combat deployments, and, you see some awful things, and war is an ugly creature. But, some of the resulting experiences, right? I struggled with PTSD, depression, for probably 6 or more years. Half of those years, I didn't even realize, that I was going through those things. And And so, when I came to the epiphany of why these things are important, essentially it was, and I'll never forget this, is my daughter. I was sitting on a couch, who was, I think, 7 or 8 at the time. She had come up to me and asked me, Dad, can you jump on the trampoline with me? Can you play with me? And, I was like, nah, I don't really feel like it. I was just staring at my phone, the little dopamine injector there. And, that was just the lifestyle that I had grown accustomed. Like, I just didn't really enjoy doing things I did before. Like, I didn't have this motivation. And so, when I told her no that time, she had looked at me in the face and said, Dad, you're no fun anymore. And I realized that she was right. I wasn't fun. I wasn't the person that I used to be. And that was my epiphany moment of when I needed some help. And so I went and got it, took this journey of self-discovery and awareness, and, realized how important it is for mental health, for me as a father, husband, and as a leader as well.
And now you have started your own company, and now you're able to assist other people. Do you work mostly with men that have retired from the military, so that you've already walked their talk, so they understand that where you're coming from, and that you're an advocate for them?
Yeah, and so my business is not focused primarily on them. Obviously, I'm a huge, veteran advocate, and I am involved in numerous programs for mental health and suicide prevention and things like that. But really, the people that I look to help is first-time leaders. And so, we go back. We're talking about why. My why that I found out is basically to guide others so they can find themselves. And I think a lot of us, some of the issues we have is because we don't have that full self-awareness. And so I really want to bring that to first-time leaders who are trying to discover their own leadership style and their own strengths, and fully understand themselves on a deeper level, so they can be those effective leaders that are wellness conscious and understand those principles themselves, what they need, and do that for their employees, for their people that work for them.
Oh, I love that, Eric. And it's so important too, because this isn't something we're taught, right? I mean,
Right.
we get into leadership positions often, whether it's a supervisory position or a management position, and we don't necessarily have the training to go with it. We kind of, we do really well at the position we're in, and so then the next step is to go to the next position, which could be
Yes.
in a corporate business, in government, in any situation, but we're not always given the training to do that. So I love what you're
Right.
doing, because it's very important to be able to identify, and certainly what you just mentioned about having leaders realize who they are and
Mhm.
what is their leadership style. And their
Right.
leadership style might not be the way they've been led,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. No, I mean, I think everyone can think back to a time when they had a bad boss, or a poor leader. And something that you mentioned is hugely important, and part of my mission at Visorizing, my company, is that culture, right? And so I think our national workforce culture, at least here in the United States, like, we prioritize productivity and profit, right? And wellness is always, this second thought. We say these buzzwords about wellness and, employee wellness, et cetera, but, it's not something that's truly ingrained in our culture. And so I want to shift, our national workforce culture towards prioritizing, elements of wellness, because, you hear this work-life balance, concept. Well, to me, I don't really believe in it, because work is just a part of your life. It's just life. And so, you have to be holistically well and align that with what you're doing.
To even know that you're out of balance, or that what you want to put in your life to make it more of a balance, so it's not all work.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's so important. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, for organizations, the reality is, right, you invest in the wellness of individuals, and, that productivity and profit, that's a byproduct of having healthy
Absolutely.
humans.
If you have happy employees,
Yeah.
guess what? Your productivity is going to go up.
Yeah. And just like, I do for my clients, I try and help them understand themselves and develop them and grow them. Like, having a good leader that has that and can take that to an organization, that's what they're going to get out of their employees, and so it's just going to increase everyone. It's going to have a positive influence on them personally and professionally.
Absolutely. So can you give us, our audience always likes to know, if someone was to come work with you, what would be the benefits then working with you, both from a client point of view, and also when anybody who's in that leadership role that you're helping and assisting to find themselves and find the best leadership that they can the best leader that they can be. Oh, I think
Yeah. Yeah. No,
might
thanks for
be a
asking.
little bit stuck.
And so I think we're back together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah. No, thanks for asking that question again. And so, I base my process on this theory that I've developed, right? And it's called inherent leadership theory. And the premise of it is basically that every single person has the natural innate capacity to be a good, effective leader. And so the process, the basis of good leadership starts with self-awareness. And so when
Yes.
my clients work with me, that's what we start to focus on. And so that's, understanding themselves, their own wellness needs, their own strengths, weaknesses, biases, all of these different things to give them that deeper level of understanding of themselves. And, the importance of that really to me is I think about the analogy of the airplane oxygen mask, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
You have to put yours on first before you can help other people. And so good leaders, we have to be able to take care of ourselves and our own wellness before we can start to make those positive influences for other people. And so from there, once we have that understanding, we'll obviously set some goals. And, I'm also a certified Gallup Global Strengths Coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so I integrate in that so they can, understand some of their strengths and how to, leverage those for success. And then we'll obviously set goals with them. So whatever they want to work on, whether that be starting with their wellness journey or starting on specific leadership skills, we'll start the coaching process from there. A lot of that is centered around, obviously wellness, but the leadership skills, emotional intelligence, adaptability, and resilience. And I actually have a specific program, which is, I call it the Visor Rising experience, because it's designed for first-time leaders to help them fully understand themselves and emerge on the other side as this, inspirational servant leader that is prioritizing wellness and can make that positive influence on others.
And a couple of points that you made. One point for sure is awareness, and and I think that's huge. That's like number one, to be aware, first of all, of who you are,
Right.
and where you want to go and how you want to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And to have a coach like you to help someone in that leadership role is I think just the perfect match.
Yeah.
Also to be to be cognizant of that the wellness is so important as
Mm-hmm.
part of the leadership, as part of any work that we do, any job that we do. We have to be well. Made a great point about the airplane analogy. We use that a lot, because
Yeah.
we often think we have to look after other people first, not ourselves. But
Yeah.
if we don't have our
Yeah.
oxygen mask on first, then we aren't serving to the best of our ability. So
Yeah,
yeah, very.
no, I completely agree. And one thing that comes to mind as you were just speaking is, excuse me, that authenticity, living your authenticity, being your true self, that is such a huge important part about, your holistic wellness, and something I learned much later in life. And it fits in well with this, Men's Health Month theme, because, I grew up, in these gender roles, right? Where the man
Yes.
is, he's strong, he's, resilient, he's the provider, and even in my community within special operations, it's very, there's a lot of machismo and, man's man. And,
Heaven forbid that you ever admit you had a weakness.
right, exactly.
Or needed some wellness.
Yes. And I mean, just my personality, like that's the persona that I adopted, but that's not my true self. I feel like I'm a very empathetic, compassionate, fun-loving person. But so often, with these gender roles for men all over, like we get bogged down with this sense of responsibility and protecting and taking care of other people, that we forget to take care of ourselves as well. And so, it is a huge, huge thing for me specifically, but I think for men across
I agree.
the world, really.
I agree. I think we've just siloed ourselves too much in, female roles, women's roles, men's roles. These are the roles that you had to do or you had to be. And now we're finding out that that is not, well, first of all, it's not true.
Right.
And secondly, it doesn't allow us to be true to who we are.
Mhm.
You're a very empathetic person. I know that. You and I've had numerous conversations,
Right.
and I can tell that. I can pick that up. And that hasn't necessarily been something that was even accepted by society, was that men could be empathetic. And look at the work
Especially in
that
leadership roles.
yeah, sometimes, yes, exactly. Like you had to be, that old paradigm, that old military paradigm of the general giving out all the orders, regardless of whether or not they made sense, right? So, and I can say this, even though I'm a Canadian, I have military background.
Yes, I know.
My father served in the Canadian Navy, and my grandfather actually. I
think we're having technical difficulties again, Pramelia.
Oh dear. I can still hear you. Quite sure
We're
what's
back.
happening.
We're back. I get you.
We're back. Okay, we're back. All right. Yeah. So I was just saying that the whole paradigm of the military, which I'm so happy to see is adjusting now and changing. I have an interesting story to tell. So when my son was in grade 2, I think, he invited, it was Remembrance Day, and we celebrate here Remembrance Day on November the 11th. And so here in Canada. And so he invited his grandfather to come to his classroom. So we, in the school, the small school that my children went to, we had a lovely Remembrance Day ceremony. My dad wore his medals, then he got to come to the classroom. And one of the questions, I can still picture this, because he was in this rocking chair. It wasn't little, it was a rocking chair kind of in the corner where the teacher would normally sit, and then the kids are all sitting on the carpet,
I love that imagery too.
At his feet. And so he was explaining, he was asking questions. And I just want you to know, my dad was a true gentleman. Like, he was a gentle man. He was a beautiful, beautiful person. And so one of the questions that came up was, were you afraid?
Yep.
He did not know how to answer that question.
Yeah,
he kind of fumbled around, and I can't even remember what he actually said. But what was interesting is that the next day he phoned me and he said, if I get invited back next year, I might rethink some of my answers.
Well, it sounds like he's a very reflective man after my own heart.
Yeah. He was a very, very gentle, genuine man. So
he sounds amazing. Reminds me of my grandfather, actually.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and so, it's so important, I believe, for, those generations that didn't have the acceptance of
Mhm.
being that nurturing and that gentleness and that empathetic. We didn't probably even know the word up. We didn't
Right.
even know what the definition was back in those days. Um, so yeah, I love I love the work that you're doing, Eric, and I just love the fact that you're helping to change this whole paradigm and include wellness as part of the work
Yeah. No, and
you do with leaders.
still there?
Connect with Eric. Did we freeze? Are
Yeah,
we
we had a
frozen?
little frizz.
Oh,
Yeah.
we had a little froze. Okay, we're
Yeah.
back. We're back to,
Real good.
we just thawed out. Okay. So if you wish to connect with Eric, which I greatly recommend, his company is Visor Rising, and you can go to his website and connect with him there. So tell us a little bit of the story of why you called your company Visor Rising.
Yeah, so Visor Rising, it's
Visor Rising, sorry.
yeah, common, the way it's spelled, it's commonly mispronounced. But yeah, and so I took I love history, first of all, ancient history, Romans, Egyptians, Norse. And so Visor comes from the symbol, which is the Vegvisir, which is a Norse symbol that they used to put on their boats. They would etch it on their boats, and it really symbolized guidance. And the person who would put that on their boat, it would help them to always get to their destination. And so again, going back to my why statement, is to guide others so they can find themselves. And so, that symbol, along with some of the others that are in our logo, it really signifies, guidance and wisdom in helping people find their own path.
Beautiful. I love it. So any parting words of wisdom that you have for our listeners today? We're just winding down a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you were just talking about, I think, shifting this paradigm and mindset of, for men specifically, there is strength in, wellness and needing help and being empathetic. A lot of these traits and introverted traits, deep reflection and some of these things, so we've just had this portrait of this extroverted, strong leader, right? But, my message right now to the men is there is so much strength in, being humble and prioritizing your own wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's that deep guided strength, which you don't need to have it like on the outside. It's on the inside. It comes out, but it comes from the inside, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't, I've led, special operations, some of the most elite and there's a lot of violence in it, but just because I have these other traits, just because I have this style of leadership doesn't mean that I'm not a strong leader in in any sense.
Well, I'm sorry we're having a little bit of tease. My apologies for these frozen little moments, but anyway, they're gems. We froze Eric in time.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, just because you have these things or this style of leadership, right, it doesn't mean that you are not a strong leader on the outside.
Exactly. Absolutely. I agree. All right. Well, thank you so much for being our guest co-host here today. I greatly appreciate that. And we will go back into the chat after I do repost the event later in a couple of hours, and so a number of people will see it then. It actually gets into other people's feeds, even though they may not have tuned into the show. And we didn't get any guests today, but that could have been mainly because I had a glitch with the setting it up. I did set it up, and then I went to find it today, and it wasn't there. So So we have a big ask to heal the world. We know it's a big job, but we're up for it. We're really about helping people um, and looking at the amazing people that are out doing amazing work, like Eric is. And so you got to meet another wonderful visionary and leader and trainer and coach, Eric Maxwell. Thanks for being on our show,
Thanks so much for
Eric.
having me. I
Okay.
really appreciate it, Pramila. Thank you.
Okay.